Hello, welcome to Thank You Half Hour with Tom Christopher Warren. I am clearly Tom Christopher Warren, your host, and I am so excited because today's guest is a dear friend, is a colleague, and is remarkable for so many reasons. Let's talk about the Broadway shows: The Lion King, Sister Act, Book of Mormon on the Road, Hairspray International Tour, Wedding Singer. Let's talk about the philanthropy, and we will in this discussion. And you'll most recently recognize her from the national tour of Hadestown as Persephone, and very recently leading the Broadway company of Chicago, the fabulous Kimberly Marable. Thank you for being here. How are
Thank
you,
you
my
for
friend?
having me.
Of course. How are you?
I'm good. I'm well.
Yeah.
I am well. How are you?
Listen. I'm hanging on. I'm hanging in there. I'm well. I'm lucky enough to have this show to work on and to be working in and out of shows and seeing dear friends and coming and going. And, we're all on the right side of the dirt. So I've got no complaints. You are the busiest
Good.
woman in show business. I was going to say theater, but it extends beyond theater. I've never seen anyone. Do you sleep ever?
I try. I try. When I lay down, I fall asleep.
Fair.
It's just how much sleep do I get is the question.
Unbelievable. Kimberly and I, for my tens of listeners, know each other from The Lion King in New York. But since our time, and I don't even remember when that was probably
Oh,
6, 7,
years ago.
12 years ago. I don't know. Their time is a construct.
Yeah.
But in
hmm
the space between you and I meeting, and now you've done so much. First of all, sort of headlining Hadestown, this remarkable, extraordinary piece of theater history that I'm so grateful is still running and is exploring more casting options and is opening in the West End. I find it nothing short of thrilling. And then stepping into it's currently the longest running Broadway show still running, right? Chicago?
It is. This
What's
November will be 28 years on Broadway, which is wild and wonderful.
wonderful?
Just to think that, as an industry, the theater, like telling stories on stage is something that's viable and is of
Yeah,
interest to people globally is it's encouraging,
yeah,
for us as actors, because that's our bread and butter, but
yeah.
also just for humanity. To me, like, people still want to spend 2.5 hours in community, in a space, telling stories, reflecting on their own lives, watching other fictional characters' lives unfold. It's great.
Because
And all
we
that jazz.
and all that jazz. Because 3 years ago, we didn't know, right? We were coming out of a global pandemic and people felt unsafe in a community environment. And we didn't know if they would come back. And if they did, what would it look like? And here we are a few years later, and it's different. I won't lie, right? Things have shifted psychically and needed to. But also, we are back having a shared collective experience in a dark theater, watching stories unfold, relating to them or not relating to them, finding our commonalities with these characters, and experiencing live theater. And that's, as you said, that's our bread and butter. That's what we hope for. It's existed for thousands of years. It didn't die 3 years ago. And here we are.
Here we are, and we're better for it.
We are. I hope, in some ways, I think we're walking down a path that is perhaps not totally sustainable in commercial theater, on the Broadway level. How long can prices keep going up? How long, what will it look like in 5 years? I don't know. I'm following trends and I'm watching. My eyes are open. But what do you think? I mean, you look at the Broadway landscape right now. You're a part of it. What does it feel like now?
That is an interesting question to ponder upon, having now joined the Chicago family,
Yeah,
because I do think that in terms of accessibility, Chicago is onto something, and has been, for the last going on 28 years. Uh, you know, they created the idea of stunt casting, of, modern day stunt casting,
right.
in a way that really brings non traditional theater audiences to the theater, and introduces them to a world of storytelling that they may not have known had existed. Their tickets are not $400 a
Right.
piece.
Right.
So they are on a number of levels making theater for the people. I can't say that is a use better, more affordable pricing, yes.
Sure.
But, stunt casting, I can't say that that's, you know, a viable option for most shows.
But for
And for the
Chicago,
sustain, but for Chicago, it's a different thing.
well, it's a narrative
But
about uh, uh, giving
about
celebrity.
celebrity,
Yes, right. The
it is
vehicle.
literally about celebrity.
Yeah.
So it makes sense in that way, right? But in terms of the longevity of theater and musical theater specifically as an art form, I do think that we are in a little bit of dangerous territory. I
Yeah.
think there's a little bit of fear of the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
of telling new and different stories that perhaps are not a movie, or, that are telling different types of stories. Uh,
veering from a
but
catalog of
equally,
veering from a catalog of music that is familiar, right? Music of the
right.
Four Seasons, music of the Tina Turner catalog, the whatever. Are we willing to go and sit in a theater and watch a score that we're not familiar with?
But you know what? I I think resoundingly yes.
Right.
I think we are. I think it's just not necessarily a pipeline issue, but more so re-examining how we make theater,
Yeah.
and acknowledging that yes, it is a huge financial undertaking that requires a lot of risk, that requires a lot of sort of anticipating what people will or will not like. But I'm always, as a performer, but also as a patron of the theater, someone who, and as a human, someone who seeks the truth,
Yeah.
and someone who seeks common humanity, or, someone who has a different human experience that I can observe and really reflect on my own experience, or have empathy for them. And I think if we really go back to the foundation of that being the root of why we do theater and why we tell stories,
Yeah.
and why we maybe it is, the music of X artist, um, but how are we telling those stories?
Mm.
And maybe it is, new music by an up and coming, or maybe somebody who's been doing it for years just hasn't
Sure.
had the money to back them,
Right.
composer or lyricist or writer. I think there's a lot of fear in how we make our theater, that there won't be a return of investment. And I think we have to be fearless in our lives, and in our
Yeah.
making of art and storytelling, and engaging in community and in this business.
I feel like that's where Hadestown sort of lightning in a bottle, in that it wasn't what we were used to visually, musically, conceptually. It sort of broke a lot of the rules and was magnificent in my own personal opinion, right? I saw that original production and I sobbed from beginning to end. Everything about the theatricality of it, the storytelling, the design, Patrick Page, every single element came together in a surprising way and told a thousands of year old story in a new, fresh, dynamic, accessible way for a contemporary audience. You're one of the smartest people I know, so I'm sure it's not lost on you that the last two Broadway shows you've done have had polar opposite audience bases in terms of,
Oh, yes.
right? Like Chicago, you have probably a lot of tourists, a lot of maybe non-English speakers as a first language. It's a part of New York tourism, that show. Hadestown, probably not. I think their demographic is very different. You're getting artsy fartsy, smarty, intellectual music, all kinds of, an array of music lovers. And now they're tapping into, their own version of stunt casting with Betty Who, and, getting these new audience demographics in. What is that like, having these two diametrically opposed experiences box from each other?
Sure. It's interesting that you asked that question because I got to Chicago fully expecting, oh, it's Broadway, so there's not going to be anybody at the stage door. It's not going to be like, you know, the fandom of, the Hadestown
Sure.
Songbirds. But there is an entirely different and similar fan base for Chicago.
So cool.
And it's not necessarily like old artsy fartsy, people who were around when it, first came out in the 70s.
Sure.
It is young people. It is
Is it?
people who have a real deep appreciation for the art form, who are coming back again and again, 50 times.
Wow.
I don't know where they're getting.
Yeah.
God bless them.
Absolutely.
And I've had conversations with some of these people who have come to see Chicago 20 times,
Yeah.
30 times, 50 times. And they love that, like Hadestown, it is now a timeless story.
Yeah.
That no matter who is in the company, the story gets told authentically, and also individual to that individual.
Yeah.
There's a uniqueness that percolates and really makes the production shimmer in a way that perhaps may not happen in other shows. And in that way, I do think that they're actually more alike than one would think.
Isn't that something?
Hadestown and Chicago. And yeah, I'm curious to see the crossover, especially because, particularly with Lana Gordon and I, there has been this sort of like Persephone, Velma Kelly sort of crossover. And, Velma and Persephone are forces of nature, literally.
Yeah,
Especially
literally.
for Persephone.
And Nala,
Literally.
both of you played Nala.
Exactly. So I think that there is a through line that people who follow our careers as actors are sort of saying, oh, perhaps these are stories I should be checking out because I enjoy these people as artists and humans. But yeah, the other thing too that I found interesting about Hadestown, it is definitely like a cult, not a cult, but like in that there's a huge like why, like in like the Hunger Games kind of way or the Harry Potter kind of way, there's a huge young adult audience. Like high schoolers live and breathe Hadestown, and it's really cool to watch from the stage, but it's really cool to engage with these young people socially, whether at the stage door or on occasionally on social media, and just to see how watching this story or listening to this music, they've found something that they can identify with. They've found their people in other theater artists or other musicians or art, like visual artists, and they've just really found a story that's relatable to them in their young aged experience as teenagers, because I do think that Orpheus and Eurydice were definitely the young lovers. The young people were passionate and willing to risk it all. And so I think that it's been really wonderful to observe, our young people living today really understand and grapple with what it means to love that deeply, to care that deeply about something, or even, about activism. How do you reconcile with things that you don't like in the world? And do you say anything or do you do anything?
Yeah.
Really empowering yourself and knowing that you have agency, even as one person. Collectively we are many. And I think among the many messages of Hadestown, it's been really wonderful to watch young audience members sort of tackle all of those
Well, it makes
themes.
sense, right? We watch these young protagonists fighting for their lives, quite literally, and for their love. Despite knowing the weight of it and what could potentially be lost, they still find that optimism and preserve the possibility of a happy ending. And these young
Mhm.
people who are coming to see you have lived 20% of their lives under Trump. So they are searching for the optimism. They are looking actively because we've left them a planet where they have no choice but to
Yes.
look for the possibility of a happy ending. So it makes sense to me. It resonates. But, you had me. I was like, I'm one of those cult followers until you said young people. And then I'm like, well, I'm a generation
Well, I
above them,
mean,
but I get it.
but and I'm glad you said that, because it's the young people that I'm engaging with on social media,
Yeah.
right? Or seeing their fan art, but it's the people in our generation who I'm seeing in person,
Yeah.
who who may go to Chicago and be like, I saw you in Hadestown and that changed my life,
Yeah.
and now I'm doing XYZ. So it is a universal message, and ultimately I think that's the point of theater, whether it's Hadestown, Chicago, Lion King,
Sure.
or otherwise, to make us ask questions, to make us examine ourselves and our part in this world,
Mm-hmm.
and our part in fostering community, and really ensuring that we are caring for one another and thus caring for ourselves.
Well, we're not really, this is a broad generalization, forgive me, but in academia, we're focusing on standardized tests, not necessarily critical thought. And
Sure.
theater demands art, with whatever the art, demands critical thought. It demands a subjective, opinion based. How do you unpack this, and how does it relate to you, and how does it inspire you to make a difference? You talked about activism. I have to refer to my notes because the list of credits commenting on how you serve the world in which you live is too extensive for me not to refer. But you've founded Broadway Serves, right, which is an affiliate organization of Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS. You serve on the Entertainment Community Fund's Human Services Committee. You serve on the advisory committee for the Entertainment Community Fund's Looking Ahead program, and you're on the Board of Trustees for Broadway Cares. What you're remarkable in your philanthropy, in the demand you have of yourself and those around you to engage in your community. What inspired you to that? Where did you get that from?
I'm sorry. I just had a moment of like, oh, I really do all those things. And there's a Broadway Cares board meeting in a couple hours. So
Sure,
yes, I
sure.
really do all those things. Honestly, I have to thank my parents for
Mm-hmm.
that, for instilling in me the importance of a shared humanity and understanding that, um, at any given point, I could not be as privileged as I am
Mm,
for whatever reason:
okay.
unemployment, a war, a supply chain, a pandemic,
A pandemic, yeah.
the list of reasons why, this state of privilege that I exist in is fragile goes on, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
particularly being in an unstable industry,
sure.
professionally. Um, and, you know, I've lived some more, but when I was a child, growing up, I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally, and growing up and taking the subway with my parents, giving money to people on the train because somebody needs to eat today.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to eat today. Uh, I know that money is not always going to food now, and so I try to serve in other ways, so that I know where my money is going and where my action is going and where my time and energy and love is going.
Mm,
Um, I just think it's a necessity for being a good human being, to be honest. And I think, particularly in an industry where you almost have to step forward selfishly in order to eat and pay your bills
Right.
and really have a focus on self. um, it is imperative that we broaden our scope and really take into account that I cannot exist without you existing, and that I cannot be well without you being well. And how do we make that happen together? Um, how I've gotten to be a part of each of these organizations has varied over time.
Sure.
But I very much thank my involvement and my being a part of the Lion King company for helping me to go into these rooms and to be
Yeah.
able to affect change in a way that is, yes, boots on the ground, like we do for Broadway Serves, but is also sort of, behind closed doors and
Mm.
making decisions and talking to people who have influence and money and have the ears of politicians and millionaires and billionaires, and raising questions and encouraging us to seek global humanitarian care, right?
Yeah.
Um, and regarding the Lion King specifically, working with our cubs and seeing how amazing they are. They are superheroes.
They
They're
are.
9 and 10 and 12, going to school or being homeschooled and doing a Broadway schedule, which is hard as a grown up,
Yep.
and having to really grapple with that responsibility, but also being a kid. And how do we support them? And so, because of the kids in Lion King, we started our Kids Serve division of Broadway Serves. And through that, I was invited to be part of the Looking Ahead Programs Advisory Committee. And now I'm the Eastern co chair. And like, it's things beget things,
Sure.
right? Um, Tom and Larry and Lane and all of the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful humans over at Broadway Cares have been seeing the work that we've been doing with Broadway Serves. And, you know, Barbara and Joe and all of the other wonderful people at the Entertainment Community Fund have been seeing the things we've been doing with Broadway Serves and with the Looking Ahead program. And they know my heart, but they also know that I'm wanting to bring everybody along for the ride,
Yeah.
and ensuring that we all can take part in being principally good humans and then artists too.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, and one begets the other, right? Being a better, I don't want to use the word better, but being a more empathetic, involved, critically thinking human makes you a stronger actor, a stronger
It
storyteller.
makes you a fuller
There it
artist.
is.
You
There it
have
is.
so much life experience to bring to the table
Yeah.
because you've experienced how things work in the world and how what sort of things matter to people. And you can bring that to the pen and writing things, to your music when you're singing, to the stage when you're dancing or telling stories. As you are 1000% correct, it makes us stronger, fuller humans and artists,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
The young people listening who may be in the New York area, some may be on Broadway, some may not, how they want to get involved. They want to find out more about Broadway Serves. They want to include their voice in the conversation. What can they do?
Yes, I would say they should follow us on Instagram. We
Mm-hmm.
are improving our social media presence,
Love it.
giving us some grace.
Yeah.
And that is at Broadway Serves. You can also email us at info@broadwayserves.org and be added to our mailing list, or just ask a question. A lot of times, we will help people, especially for people who are not in New York City, get in touch with organizations where they are, where they can serve, where they can be a part of their communities, and really helping their homes survive and thrive. And so, yeah, social media,
I love it. We're
Email us.
also in an important election year. You may not,
Yes.
some of you may not know that. This is a charged moment. Get involved, vote locally, do some reading, and join the conversation. I'm
I could
always
not. Yeah,
shocked when I have a conversation with someone who is intelligent and articulate and fun and artistic and whatever, and they tell me they don't vote. It blows my mind, and they have their reasons, right? So we have a conversation about it. They're not doing it necessarily blindly, but they are sometimes intentionally blinding themselves because it is overwhelming. It is a lot. And
sure.
so, yeah, this is an important year.
It's an important year federally, obviously, but
Sure.
I also have to inject that local elections are key.
Everything.
They are paramount. And I can't speak to outside of New York City for myself, because that's where I live.
Sure.
But please, 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 I implore you, do your research, find out who your current representatives are, in your local, political establishment, but also who your representatives are to the federal government, and educate yourselves. Are they truly representing your
Yeah.
interests? And
Yeah.
if they're not, find the candidates who are,
Yeah.
and make your voice be heard. And one of the best ways to do that is at the polls.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're 18 or gonna be 18, register to vote if you haven't already.
Yeah.
Make your voting plan. It's important. It is important. It is important. We are where we are now because of the political decisions we've made at the ballot box.
That is correct.
Years ago.
That is correct. Yeah. What's next for you, my friend? Anything you can talk about?
Oh, sure. What's next immediately is time.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to talk about that because there's an idea of scarcity, that, you walk away from a contract in the way that I did, and there you will never work again. And it's just not true.
Right. Right.
It's not true. And particularly with Chicago, like, I'm in the family now.
Sure.
And I was there for 44 weeks on which was supposed to be an 8-week run. And so I think I can safely say that I will be back at some point. But what's equally important is making sure that as a human being that I am okay, that as a member of my family, that we are okay as a family,
Yeah.
that my health is okay, that I can take some time for my mental health and physical health. And so that is what I am doing. I'm taking some time. And then once healing has sufficiently occurred, getting my butt back in class.
Yeah.
And just retraining and re-engaging in the art forms that I love, with a sense of curiosity and continued love. And yeah, I'll probably be back in Chicago, but for now, who knows?
Listen,
the world is my oyster.
The world is your oyster, and doors open to those who are paying attention, right? And there's no one I know personally who pays better, closer attention than you. And I say that with no hyperbole. You are a singular, remarkable human being that we are lucky enough to have in the art form that I love, because God knows you could have gone off and been a politician and affected change that way. And I'm just great, and you may still, I'm just grateful to count you among my tribe, my people. We're lucky to have you, and I wish you absolutely nothing but the very best in everything going forward. I adore you.
Thank you. I adore you as well.
Thanks.
And I also have to raise you up as well and give you your flowers for all that you're doing to create new art, to fortify and uplift existing art, and as an educator especially to create and harness and build up the next generation of fantastic artists. We would not have a future in the arts without you.
You're doing
So
the
thank
same
you.
thing. So, and yeah, thankful for all of us who are doing that, because we need this generation to do many things, and
Yes.
hopefully leading them with love and empathy and grace will help. So that's what we do.
Yes.
Right? Thank you, my dear. Thank you for being here. I hope I see
Thanks
you
for
again very
having
soon.
me.
I love you.
Yes. Here's to that. Love you too. Mwah.
Bye.
All right, that's a half hour.
Thank you, half hour.
Boxland Media. Think big.